Makes sense. I'm the same way. Like studying when it's quiet. Jake's footsteps came closer. What are you working on? Kira hesitated. Was this a trick? Another cruel joke? But his voice sounded genuine. Curious, not mocking. Classification studies, she said finally. Xenobotany specimens. Cool. Mind if I look? Before she could answer, Jake was at the table beside her. She heard him pick up one of the containers. Wow, this is a Tarsian fern, right? From the swamp regions? Kira blinked. Yes. How did you know that? I've been studying the catalog since I got here. Trying to catch up. We don't have half this stuff in Earth databases yet. He set the container down. You must be really good at this if you're working on advanced classification already. Kira's gray skin flickered slightly. Not enough to show color, but movement at least. Nobody had complimented her work in ever. I do okay, she said. Better than okay, I bet. Jake moved to another container. Hey, is this one of those sound-responsive species from Kepler 442b? Yes, Kira said, turning toward him. They communicate through rhythmic patterns. Tap on the glass. Jake tapped. The creature chirped back. He laughed. That's amazing. Can it learn new patterns? I've been testing that, Kira said, and for the first time in months she felt herself relaxing slightly. So far it can repeat up to 8-beat sequences. They spent the next hour talking about specimens. Jake asked questions that weren't stupid. He listened when she explained things. He treated her like a person. It was the strangest feeling Kira had experienced since arriving at the academy. When Jake finally said he had to go to his next lecture, Kira felt a small pang of disappointment. Maybe I'll see you here again, Jake said as he walked to the door. Maybe, Kira replied. The door closed and she was alone again. But somehow the silence felt different now. Less heavy. Less suffocating. Kira returned to her specimens, but her mind kept drifting back to the conversation. A human had treated her normally. Like her blindness didn't matter. Like she wasn't defective. It was probably a one-time thing. He'd hear the other students talking about her. He'd learn what she was. And then he'd avoid her like everyone else did. But for just 1 hour, Kira had felt like she belonged somewhere. And that small feeling stayed with her for the rest of the day. Jake Rivera wasn't having a great day. His neural interface had glitched during morning lecture, causing him to miss half the notes on comparative biology. The food dispenser had given him something that looked like purple slime for breakfast. And now he was lost trying to find Building 7. The Galactic Academy was massive. Humans had only been invited here 5 years ago, and Jake was one of just 3 human students on the entire station. Everything was designed for species who could see in multiple spectrums, or who had natural navigation abilities, or who could literally fly through the corridors. For a regular human with 2 eyes and 2 legs, it was overwhelming. Jake turned a corner and nearly collided with a group of Octuri students. They had 6 eyes each, all of them swiveling to look at him with what he'd learned was amusement. Lost again, human? One of them said. Just taking the scenic route, Jake replied, stepping around them. Their laughter followed him down the corridor. He was used to it by now. Humans were novelties here. Curiosities. The species that had barely figured out fusion power while everyone else had been traveling between galaxies for thousands of years. Jake checked his datapad again, trying to match the map to the actual corridor. That's when he heard it. Clicking sounds. Like someone tapping their tongue against their teeth. He looked up and saw her. A Valorian girl was walking slowly down the corridor, one hand trailing along the wall. Her crystalline skin was dull gray, not the bright shifting colors he'd seen on other Valorians. She was making those clicking sounds and moving carefully, like she was feeling her way through the space. Then Jake noticed the 3 Octuri students ahead of her. The same ones who'd just laughed at him. They were whispering to each other and grinning with all 6 eyes. One of them moved something. A guidance rail that had been along the wall. He pulled it aside, creating a gap. Behind the gap was an open maintenance shaft. Jake could see straight down into darkness. The Valorian girl kept walking toward it, clicking and tapping, completely unaware. Jake's brain caught up with what he was seeing. She was blind. She was navigating by sound. And those students had just created a trap that would send her falling into a maintenance shaft. Hey! Jake shouted and broke into a run. The Valorian girl stopped, her head turning toward his voice. The Octuri students looked up, surprised. Jake reached her just as her foot extended toward the edge. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Stop. There's a shaft right there. The girl gasped and stumbled backward into him. Her whole body was tense, defensive. What are you doing? One of the Octuri students said, floating closer. All 6 eyes were focused on Jake with genuine confusion. What am I doing? You almost killed her. Jake's heart was pounding. Killed? We were just having fun. It's not our fault the defective one can't navigate properly. Defective. Jake stared at them. You deliberately moved the rail. The Octuri student tilted his head. She shouldn't be here if she can't function. Why are you interfering? Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the words stuck in his throat. They weren't being cruel on purpose. They genuinely didn't understand what was wrong with what they'd done. Just get out of here, Jake said finally. The Octuri students floated away, still looking confused. Jake heard them muttering to each other about strange human behavior. He turned back to the Valorian girl. She'd pulled her arm free and was standing rigidly, her face turned in his general direction. Are you okay? Jake asked. I'm fine. Her voice was cold, defensive. That was close. They moved the guidance rail and there was a shaft right. I know what they did. She cut him off. I've been dealing with it for 2 years. I don't need your help. Jake blinked. I wasn't trying to. Yes, you were. You're trying to help the poor blind alien girl. I get it. You're a good person. Now leave me alone. She turned and started walking in the opposite direction, still clicking and feeling along the wall. Jake watched her go, confused and a little hurt. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next week, Jake started noticing things he'd missed before. The way other students would deliberately leave obstacles in certain corridors. The way professors would ignore raised hands from certain students. The way the cafeteria had sections where defectives weren't welcome. He'd been so focused on his own struggles as a human that he hadn't seen the bigger picture. Jake started doing research. He dug into the Academy's databases, learning about galactic history. What he found shocked him. Every major species in the galaxy had eliminated genetic disabilities thousands of years ago. They'd perfected their DNA, removed any possibility of birth defects, created mandatory genetic screening. Anyone born with a disability was either corrected immediately or euthanized. The few who slipped through, like that Valorian girl, were considered mistakes. Errors in the system. They were tolerated in some cases but never truly accepted. There was no concept of accommodation. No ramps for those who couldn't walk. No audio systems for those who couldn't see. No sign language for those who couldn't hear. Why would there be? Those people weren't supposed to exist. Jake thought about Earth. About his cousin Danny who used a wheelchair. About his high school friend Rachel who was deaf. About the legislation and protests and centuries of disabled people fighting for their rights. Earth wasn't perfect. Not by a long shot. But at least humans had figured out that different didn't mean defective. Jake found himself looking for the Valorian girl. He learned her name was Kira. She was in several of his xenobiology classes, always sitting in the back corner, always alone. He started going to the lab during off hours, hoping to run into her again. It took 3 tries before he succeeded. When he walked in and saw her at the workstation, touching specimens and making notes, he almost turned around. She'd made it clear she didn't want his help. But something made him stay. Didn't mean to startle you, he said. She turned toward his voice, her expression guarded. The lab is closed during off hours. I know. I like studying when it's quiet. They ended up talking about specimens for over an hour. Jake was careful not to mention her blindness, not to offer help, not to treat her like she was fragile. He just talked to her like a normal person. Because that's what she was. When he left that night, Jake felt like he'd accomplished something important. Not saving her from a shaft. Not helping the poor disabled girl. Just making a friend. He came back the next night. And the night after that. Kira was always there and slowly her defensive wall started coming down. She told him about Valora, about her family sending her away. She told him about the mockery, the isolation, the way professors graded her harder than everyone else. Jake told her about Earth. About disability rights movements. About the idea that society should adapt to people, not the other way around. That's impossible, Kira said one night. You can't change the entire universe to fit broken people. You're not broken, Jake said firmly. And on Earth we learned that the hard way. We used to think like everyone else here. We used to lock disabled people away, sterilize them, kill them. It took us centuries to figure out we were wrong. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Your species did that? But you seem so primitive. Jake laughed. Yeah, we are. We're barely figuring out faster-than-light travel while you guys have been doing it for millennia. But maybe we learned something important that you all forgot. Maybe being advanced isn't about perfecting people. Maybe it's about accepting them. Kira's gray skin flickered with something. Not quite color but movement. Emotion trying to break through. I wish I could see, she whispered. I hate that I can't. I hate that they're right about me being defective. They're not right, Jake said. And I'm going to prove it. He didn't know how yet. But watching Kira navigate a world that was designed to exclude her, seeing how brilliant her mind was despite everyone telling her she was worthless, Jake felt something crystallize inside him. He was a neuroscientist. He'd come to the academy to study comparative brain structure across species. But now he had a real purpose. If the galaxy wouldn't accommodate Kira, then Jake would find another way. He would give her what she wanted most. He would give her sight. Jake stared at the holographic display floating above his desk at 3 a.m. His eyes burned from hours of research, but he couldn't stop. He was onto something. The data was clear. Human brains were different from every other species in the galaxy. Not better, not worse, just different. And that difference might be the key to everything. Neural plasticity. That's what the old Earth research papers called it. The human brain's ability to rewire itself, to adapt to new situations, to create new pathways when old ones were damaged. Most alien species had lost this ability millions of years ago when they perfected their genetics. Their brains were efficient, optimized but rigid. Human brains were messy, chaotic, but incredibly adaptable. Jake pulled up another file. This one was from Earth's early 21st century, back when humans were first experimenting with brain-computer interfaces. There were cases of blind people who'd had cameras wired directly into their visual cortex. It had worked, sort of. They could see rough shapes and light. But then Jake found something else. Something buried deep in classified research archives. Neural bridging. The concept was simple but terrifying. Two brains, connected through quantum-entangled implants sharing sensory information. One person's eyes feeding data to another person's brain. It had been tested exactly once, back in 2087, with 2 volunteers who wanted to share sensory experiences. The experiment had been shut down immediately. The ethical concerns were overwhelming. The 2 subjects had reported feeling like their identities were merging, like they couldn't tell where one person ended and the other began. The technology worked, but the psychological cost seemed too high. Earth had banned the research. Too dangerous. Too invasive. Too many unknowns. But the science was sound. Jake leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. What if he could refine it? What if he used the advanced alien biotechnology available at the Academy and combined it with human neural plasticity? What if he could create a bridge that let Kira see through his eyes while keeping their identities separate? It would be permanent. Risky. It could destroy both their minds if something went wrong. But it could work. Jake spent the next 3 weeks buried in research. He barely slept. He missed classes. He stopped eating regular meals, surviving on whatever the food dispenser gave him while he worked. He cross-referenced human neuroscience with Valorian biology. He studied quantum entanglement theory. He built simulation after simulation, testing the neural bridge concept in virtual environments. The more he worked, the more convinced he became. It was possible. Difficult, dangerous, but possible. He started ordering supplies. Medical-grade quantum nodes from the Academy's research stockpile. Neural mapping equipment. Surgical tools designed for crystalline biology. He told the supply office he was working on a theoretical project for his advanced neuroscience course. They didn't ask questions. Humans were weird anyway. Always tinkering with strange ideas. Jake was so focused on his work that he didn't notice Kira had stopped coming to the lab during their usual time. He'd been so consumed with finding a solution that he'd forgotten to actually talk to her. It took him 4 days to realize something was wrong. When he finally went looking for her, he found her in the observation deck at the far end of the station. She was sitting alone by the massive windows, her gray skin dull in the starlight she couldn't see. Kira? Jake approached carefully. I haven't seen you in the lab lately. She didn't turn toward him. I've been busy. Oh, okay. I just wanted to. What are you doing, Jake? Her voice was flat. What do you mean? I'm not stupid. I've heard you ordering neural equipment. Medical supplies. Surgical tools. You've been working on something in secret. She finally turned her head toward him. I'm your project, aren't I? Jake's stomach dropped. Kira, no. It's not like that. Then what is it like? She stood up, her hands clenched. You felt sorry for the poor blind alien girl. You decided you'd fix her. Make her normal. Prove that humans are better than everyone else. That's not what this is about. Then what? Kira's voice cracked. What are you doing, Jake? Tell me the truth. Jake took a deep breath. There was no point hiding it now. I've been researching neural bridge technology. It's an old Earth concept. Two brains connected through quantum implants. I think I can create a version that would let you see through my eyes. Kira went very still. What? Your optic nerves never developed, so we can't fix your eyes directly. But if we create a neural bridge between us, my visual cortex could feed data to your brain. You'd see what I see. Not through your own eyes, but through mine. That's impossible. It's not. The technology exists. Earth banned it because of ethical concerns, but the science works. I've run hundreds of simulations. With your Valorian neural structure and human plasticity, I think we could make it work. Kira was shaking now. You want to connect our brains? Permanently? It would have to be permanent, yes. The quantum entanglement can't be reversed once it's established. And what happens to you? Kira demanded. What do you lose? Jake hesitated. There are risks. The bridge could draw too much from my visual cortex. I might lose some of my own sight. There could be neural feedback that damages both our minds. We might experience psychological blending where our identities start to merge. In the worst-case scenario, we both end up brain dead. Are you insane? Kira's voice rose. Why would you risk that? Because you deserve a choice. Jake stepped closer. Every species out here thinks the only solution to disability is elimination. Delete the person, delete the problem. But humans learn there's another way. Accommodation. Adaptation. Giving people choices about their own lives. I never asked for this. I know. That's why I'm asking now. Jake ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, I'm not trying to fix you, Kira. You're not broken. But you told me you wished you could see. You said you hated not being able to. This could give you that option. Not because you're defective. Not because you need to be cured. But because it's your choice. Kira turned away from him. Her shoulders were shaking. My whole life, everyone has told me I'm a mistake. That I shouldn't exist. That if I'd been born properly, I would have been eliminated before I took my first breath. I know. And now you're offering me a chance to see. To experience the one thing I've wanted since I was old enough to understand what I was missing. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Risk your own mind? Your own sight? What do you get out of it? Jake was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I get to prove something. To myself and to everyone here. I get to show that humanity's approach works. That accommodation and choice are better than elimination and perfection. And I get to help someone I care about. Kira made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. She turned back toward him. If we do this, if it works, I'll never be able to go back. I'll be connected to you forever. Your sight will be mine. What happens if you die? What happens if we end up hating each other? I don't have all the answers, Jake admitted. This technology has only been tested once and it was shut down immediately. We'd be pioneering something completely new. It could fail spectacularly. But it could work. Yes, it could work. Kira stood there in silence for what felt like forever. Stars wheeled past the observation window behind her, painting patterns of light she'd never seen. Finally she spoke. I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need, Jake said. This is your decision, Kira. Not mine. Not your family's. Not the galaxy's. Yours. She nodded slowly and walked past him toward the exit. At the door she paused. Jake. Yeah. Thank you. For seeing me as a person who deserves a choice. Nobody's ever done that before. Then she was gone, leaving Jake alone with the stars and the weight of what he was offering. He looked out at the vast expanse of space beyond the window. Somewhere out there, humanity was still struggling to catch up with species that had been traveling the stars for millennia. But maybe, just maybe, humans had learned something important that everyone else had forgotten. Maybe being advanced wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about compassion. 3 days passed before Kira gave Jake her answer. She found him in the lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing brain scans and neural pathways. I want to do it, she said quietly. Jake looked up, his eyes tired but alert. Are you sure? There's no going back once we start. I'm sure. Kira's gray skin rippled slightly. I've spent my whole life in darkness. If there's even a chance I could see, I have to take it. Even if it means risking everything. Jake stood up and walked over to her. Then we need help. I can't do this alone. We need a surgeon who understands Valorian biology and who won't report us to the Academy Board. I might know someone, Kira said. Dr. Vess. He's old, really old. He teaches advanced alien physiology. He's Valorian and he's always been kind to me. Never treated me like I was defective. Can we trust him? I think so. He's the only professor who ever asked if I needed accommodations instead of just marking me down for not performing like everyone else. They found Dr. Vess in his office 2 hours later. He was ancient by Valorian standards, his crystalline skin faded to a pale silver. When Jake explained the neural bridge concept, the old professor was quiet for a long time. I had a sister, Dr. Vess finally said. Born blind like you, Kira. This was 300 years ago, before the genetic mandates became absolute. My parents kept her hidden for 2 years. Then the authorities found out. They took her away. I never saw her again. Kira's hand went to her throat. I'm sorry. I've spent 3 centuries wondering what happened to her. Whether she could have had a full life if society had been different. Dr. Vess looked at Jake with his old, tired eyes. You humans are strange. Primitive in so many ways. But you carry something we lost long ago. The belief that every life has value regardless of perfection. Will you help us? Jake asked. Dr. Vess nodded slowly. Yes, for my sister. For Kira. And perhaps for the future this might create. The preparation took 2 weeks. Jake refined his neural bridge design while Dr. Vess secured the medical facility and supplies. They worked in secret, meeting late at night when the academy was mostly empty. Jake ran final simulations, testing every possible outcome. The success rate wasn't great. 60% chance of full functionality. 20% chance of partial connection. 20% chance of catastrophic failure resulting in brain damage or death for both of them. Those aren't good odds, Dr. Vess said, reviewing the data. They're the best I can do, Jake replied. The technology has never been properly tested. We're working with theory and hope. The night before the surgery, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that could go wrong. He might lose his sight completely. He might lose his mind. He might die on the operating table. But when he thought about Kira, about the way she navigated a world designed to exclude her, about the brilliance trapped behind the darkness, he knew he had to try. Kira was thinking similar thoughts in her own quarters. She traced her fingers over the walls of her room, memorizing every texture one last time. If the surgery worked, she'd see these walls tomorrow. If it failed, she might never touch anything again. She wasn't afraid of dying. She'd spent 23 years being told she should never have been born. Death didn't scare her. What terrified her was hope. The possibility that she might actually see. That the one thing she'd wanted her entire life might finally be real. Hope was more dangerous than despair. The surgery was scheduled for early morning, when the medical facility would be at its emptiest. Jake and Kira arrived separately, meeting in the surgical suite where Dr. Vess had everything prepared. The room was filled with equipment. Neural scanners. Quantum entanglement generators. Surgical tools designed for both human and Valorian biology. In the center were 2 operating tables, positioned side by side. Last chance to back out, Dr. Vess said, looking at both of them seriously. Once I begin the implantation sequence, there's no stopping. The quantum nodes will entangle permanently. Jake looked at Kira. Her face was turned toward him, her empty eyes somehow still expressive. I'm ready, she said. Me too, Jake agreed. They climbed onto their respective tables. Dr. Vess attached neural monitors to both of them, the displays showing their brain activity in real time. Jake's was the chaotic, adaptive pattern typical of humans. Kira's was the crystalline, structured pattern of Valorians. I'm going to put you both under now, Dr. Vess said. The surgery will take approximately 14 hours. I'll be implanting microscopic quantum nodes at precise locations in both your brains. Jake, the nodes will connect to your visual cortex and primary sensory areas. Kira, yours will integrate with your neural processing centers, creating pathways where none existed before. What happens when we wake up? Kira asked. Unknown, Dr. Vess said honestly. The connection should be active immediately, but your brain will need time to learn how to interpret the data. It could take days or weeks before you actually see anything recognizable. Jake felt the sedative entering his system through the 4. The room started to blur. See you on the other side, he mumbled to Kira. I hope so, she whispered back. Then everything went dark. Jake dreamed of colors he couldn't name and sounds that looked like light. His unconscious mind was already trying to prepare for what was coming, building bridges between concepts that had never been connected before. 14 hours later, Dr. Vess completed the final implantation. Both patients were stable. Their brain scans showed the quantum nodes were active and entangled. The connection was live. Now came the hardest part. Waiting to see if it worked. Jake woke first. His head felt like it was splitting apart. Pain radiated from behind his eyes, sharp and insistent. He groaned and tried to sit up, but Dr. Vess gently pushed him back down. Don't move yet. Your brain is adjusting to the nodes. The pain will pass. Kira? Jake's voice was rough. Still unconscious. Her surgery was more complex. It should be another hour. Jake lay there, focusing on breathing through the pain. Gradually it began to fade. He opened his eyes carefully and looked around the room. Everything looked normal. His vision was intact. That was a good sign. But he felt something else. A presence. Like someone was standing just behind his consciousness. Not quite there but not quite absent either. The neural bridge was active. An hour later, Kira began to stir. Dr. Vess monitored her vitals carefully as she slowly regained consciousness. Her gray skin flickered weakly, showing the first hints of color Jake had ever seen from her. Kira's eyes opened, though they saw nothing. Her hand reached out instinctively, searching for something to orient herself. I'm here, Jake said, taking her hand. Kira squeezed his fingers. Did it work? The connection is active, Dr. Vess said. But we won't know if it's functional until... I don't see anything, Kira interrupted. Her voice was small, defeated. It's still dark. It didn't work. Jake's heart sank. 60% chance of success. They'd fallen into the 40% of failure. Give it time, Dr. Vess said. Your brain has never processed visual information before. It needs to learn a completely new language. But Kira wasn't listening. Tears were forming in her sightless eyes, crystalline drops that caught the light she couldn't see. It didn't work. I'm still blind. I'll always be blind. Jake held her hand tighter, fighting back his own disappointment. They'd risked everything. Permanent brain implants. Possible death. All for nothing. Or so they thought. Because what none of them realized yet was that Kira's brain was working furiously in the background. Neural pathways were forming. Connections were being built. The quantum data from Jake's visual cortex was flooding into her mind, and her brilliant, adaptive brain was trying to make sense of it. It would take time. But the bridge was working. And soon, very soon, Kira would see light for the first time in her life. 3 days passed in disappointment. Kira remained in the medical facility under Dr. Vess's observation, but nothing changed. She still couldn't see. The darkness remained absolute. Jake visited every day, guilt eating away at him. He'd convinced her to take this risk, and now they were both stuck with permanent brain implants that didn't even work. I'm sorry, he said for the 100th time, sitting beside her bed. Stop apologizing, Kira replied, though her voice was hollow. I made the choice. I knew the risks. But Jake could see the defeat in her posture. The way her gray skin had gone even duller than before. She'd allowed herself to hope, and hope had betrayed her. On the 4th morning something changed. Jake was in his quarters getting ready for class when he felt it. A strange sensation like someone was gently touching the inside of his skull. Not painful, just there. Present. At the exact same moment in the medical facility, Kira sat up suddenly in bed. Dr. Vess, she whispered. Something's happening. The old Valorian hurried over. What do you feel? I don't know. It's like... Kira struggled to find words. Like there are colors in the darkness. But not colors. Feelings that might be colors. Warmth where there wasn't warmth before. Dr. Vess quickly checked the neural monitors. His eyes widened. The bridge is activating. Your brain is starting to process the visual data. We need to contact Jake immediately. Within 20 minutes, Jake burst into the medical facility, out of breath from running. The moment he entered Kira's room, she turned her head directly toward him. Jake. Her voice trembled. I'm here. What's happening? I can feel you. Not see you. Not yet. But I know exactly where you are. There's a presence, a warmth, a shape in the darkness that means you. Tears were streaming down her crystalline face. Is this what seeing is like? Not yet, Jake said, moving closer. But it's starting. Your brain is learning. Over the next 2 weeks, Kira's world slowly came into focus. It didn't happen all at once. First came vague impressions of light and dark. Then rough shapes began to separate from the background. Colors emerged as feelings that gradually became actual visual sensations. Jake spent every free moment with her, helping her brain learn to interpret what his eyes were showing it. He'd point at objects and describe them, giving her brain multiple data points to connect visual input with meaning. That's red, he'd say, looking at a medical scanner. The color of warmth and urgency. Kira would concentrate, and slowly, the sensation in her mind would resolve into something recognizable. Red. Actual red. A color she'd never experienced before. It was exhausting for both of them. The neural bridge meant they were constantly connected, constantly sharing. Jake started experiencing flashes of Kira's echolocation, feeling the shape of spaces through sound the way she did. It was disorienting but fascinating. By the third week, Kira could see clearly through Jake's eyes. When he looked at her, she saw herself for the first time. Her crystalline body was erupting in colors. Gold wonder, blue joy, purple amazement. The emotional response to finally seeing created a cascade of color across her skin that took Jake's breath away. "I'm beautiful," Kira whispered, staring at her own hands through Jake's vision. "I never knew. Everyone always said gray was the color of shame, of defectiveness. But look at me now." She was radiant. The colors shifted and swirled in patterns that were uniquely hers, expressing emotions in ways no other Valorian could match. News of the successful neural bridge spread through the academy within days. It was impossible to hide. Kira walked through corridors now without clicking or feeling along walls. She navigated perfectly, seeing through Jake's eyes even when he wasn't physically near her. The quantum connection worked across distances. The reactions were immediate and divided. Some students were horrified. The Acturi who'd tormented Kira avoided her entirely now, disturbed by the implications. If disabilities could be accommodated, what did that mean for their entire social structure? Other students were curious. A few even approached Kira with questions. How did it work? Could it help others? Was she still herself, or had she become part human? The academy administration was less open-minded. Jake and Kira were called before the council of professors to explain themselves. The council chamber was intimidating. 12 professors from different species sat in a semicircle, all of them staring down at Jake and Kira with various expressions of disapproval. "You performed unauthorized medical experimentation," the Tharxian head professor said, her multiple eyes narrowed. "You implanted experimental technology without proper oversight. You've contaminated a Valorian neural structure with human modifications." "With respect," Jake said, standing tall, "we didn't contaminate anything. We created an accommodation. A way for Kira to experience sight without changing who she is. She was defective. She should have been eliminated at birth according to Valorian law." "I'm right here," Kira interrupted, her skin flashing angry red. "Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. And I'm not defective. I never was. I was different. There's a distinction." The professors muttered among themselves. Dr. Vess, who'd been called to testify, spoke up from the side of the chamber. "I've reviewed their work thoroughly. The neural bridge technology is sound. More than that, it's revolutionary. For the first time in galactic history, we have a method to accommodate disabilities rather than eliminate them. This could help thousands of hidden individuals across the galaxy." "Hidden individuals who shouldn't exist in the first place," another professor argued. "And there it is," Jake said, his voice rising. "That's the real issue, isn't it? You're not concerned about safety or ethics. You're concerned about what this means for your perfect society. Because if we can accommodate disabilities, then maybe eliminating disabled people was wrong all along." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some professors defended the genetic mandates. Others questioned them for the first time in their careers. The debate raged for over an hour. Finally, the head professor called for order. "We will vote on whether to ban this neural bridge technology and require its removal from both subjects." The vote was close. 6 in favor of banning. 5 against. The deciding vote came from Ambassador Rita Foster, the human representative to the Academy Board. She'd been sitting quietly in the back, listening to everything. "I vote against the ban," she said firmly. "And I'll tell you why. Every species in this room has spent thousands of years perfecting individuals to fit your society. Humanity spent centuries learning to reshape society to fit all individuals. We made mistakes. We hurt people. We excluded and eliminated just like you did. But we learned. We grew. We changed. And now we're better for it." She stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. "You look at humans and see a primitive species. And you're right, in many ways we are. But we learned something you forgot. True advancement isn't measured by genetic perfection. It's measured by compassion. By the ability to honor difference instead of erase it. Jake and Kira proved that today. The question is, are you advanced enough to accept it?" The silence that followed was deafening. The head professor cleared her throat. "The vote is tied. In such cases, the matter requires further study. The neural bridge will be permitted temporarily while we investigate its broader implications. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Other people came forward. A Tharxian born with only 4 eyes instead of 6. An Octuri with a genetic condition that caused chronic pain. A Luminarch whose energy field was unstable. Dozens of defects who'd been hidden away, exiled, or institutionalized. They all wanted accommodations. They all wanted choices. Kira became their voice. She drafted the first Galactic Accessibility Accords, working with Jake and Ambassador Foster to create guidelines for accommodating disabilities rather than eliminating them. It was slow, frustrating work. Most species resisted. But slowly attitudes began to shift. The neural bridge technology was approved for wider research. Other applications were developed. Visual data for the blind. Auditory bridges for the deaf. Sensory accommodations for dozens of conditions. 6 months after the surgery, Jake and Kira stood on the observation deck together, looking out at the stars. The neural connection between them had deepened in unexpected ways. Jake could navigate in complete darkness now using Kira's echolocation. Kira could see the universe in all its glory through Jake's eyes. "I never thanked you properly," Kira said, her skin glowing soft amber. "For what?" "For seeing me as whole when everyone else saw me as broken. For giving me a choice instead of a cure. For proving that humanity's way might actually be the advanced one." Jake smiled. "You did most of the work. You're the one who stood up to the council. You're the one fighting for others now. We did it together." Kira's skin shifted to warm gold. 2 different species, 2 different ways of perceiving the world, connected forever. If that's not a symbol for what the galaxy could become, I don't know what is. Through their shared connection, Jake felt what Kira felt. Not just sight or sound, but emotion. Hope, joy, belonging. For the first time in her life, she truly felt like she belonged somewhere. And Jake felt it too. The confirmation that he'd done the right thing. That sometimes the most advanced solution wasn't perfection. It was acceptance. Far below them, in the academy corridors, a young Valorian student with mobility issues walked past a group of Tharxians. They didn't mock him. They didn't move obstacles in his path. Instead, one of them asked if he needed assistance reaching his next class. It was a small moment. Barely noticeable in the grand scheme of things. But it was a start. And as Kira always said, every revolution began with a single choice to see people as they truly were. Not defective. Just different. And absolutely worthy of belonging.